I will basically just say three essential things, and perhaps since my focus is largely on security-related issues, I'll focus among the three in particular on that aspect. But before I do, let me say just a couple of things, and it really is just by way of adding to some degree to what's already been said. I think if you look at how the three legs of the relationship, as Alan has said, can be advanced in the future from the perspective of the Taiwan government and the ying-jeou government, you have to emphasize the real need to deal with practical achievement as opposed to symbolism. This has all been referred to in various ways, but there's a real opportunity here now, I think, to move forward in ways that just simply haven't existed before. And the Ma government has, well, Ma Ying-jeou's camp has laid out, of course, a process for trying to do this, to try to really focus indeed on process and substance, and try to move along in a pragmatic way, looking at functional areas first and using that as a basis for developing greater degree of confidence and trust and everything else that's needed, both within Taiwan and between China and Taiwan. And of course, that also serves to reassure the United States in a very fundamental way. But there are, of course, many challenges in that process. And there are basically going to be challenges, I think, that will be in terms of domestic politics within Taiwan. How far do you go? How much do you open up? There's clearly some public views of real, I wouldn't say necessarily anxiety, but some real caution on the part of the public about how far you go in that direction. And this is going to have to be handled, I think, in a very sophisticated way by the Ma government to be able to address some of the anxieties that exist in the public about how far one needs to go in that direction. And of course, it relates also to the issue, which is of course symbolic to some degree, but it does relate to substance, the issue of the peace accord, and how soon Taiwan would want to try to engage with the mainland in dealing with that issue, and how important it is indeed as a facilitator, as opposed to an obstacle, in moving forward with functional relations. Now, if the two can be completely separated and move forward in the functional area and the pragmatic area without having to reach the issue of a peace accord, then that's, in my view, all the better. And there may indeed be a possibility to do that, but I see the potential here, as I've said, for moving forward in this area as based on the 92 consensus or some variant thereof, as Alan and others have said. The second major element, I think, that's important is to have a strategy that can restrain what I would call restrain the unifiers. Restrain the unifiers in Taiwan, particularly obviously within the Kuomintang and the Deep Blue, and to restrain the unifiers in the mainland. Now, one tends to assume the entire mainland government are unifiers, obviously. What I mean by that is to restrain those elements within the Chinese government who believe that this Ma victory represents for themselves a very unique opportunity to press forward now with the unification side of the Beijing agenda as opposed to the peace and stability side of the agenda, and the strengthening of relations across the strait that ultimately over time will work in the interests of Beijing because time in some sense is on their side. I think there is a difference in emphasis among groups within China as to how much indeed emphasis you have to put on moving forward to get advancement in symbolism, again, on the unification side, as opposed to trying to do those more basic functional things. So there's a whole host there also of political challenges, I think, that confront the Ma government and will confront Beijing in trying to deal with this need to restrain the impetus towards unification. And these two issues, practical achievement and unification, of course, and restraining unification, of course, are very, very closely interrelated. Ma has done a pretty good job, I think, of trying not to raise expectations, certainly to the contrary, among pro-unifiers within the Kuomintang and the Deep Blue. And I think carrying through on that is going to be a big challenge for him politically. The third element that I would say is to maintain the confidence of the United States and of China both to on the one hand, a commitment to defense vis-a-vis the United States viewpoint, and on the other hand, a commitment to dialogue that is reassuring. And let me just say a few words about the defense side. I think there could very well be a strong sentiment within Taiwan after the Ma Ying-jeou victory that there is really no need to move forward very much with defense for Taiwan. Here you have a unique opportunity. We're all talking about it in very positive terms. There's a real importance to establishing an understanding with the mainland. In order to do this, you have to reassure, you have to lower the heat, you have to really step away from the development of defense capabilities, because this would be provocative for Beijing. It stirs up all kinds of disputes within Taiwan, etc., etc. My view would be that that kind of attitude has to be very carefully constrained. That is to say, it has to be based in a larger strategy in which you can have restraint on defense as long as you have some encouragement on the political side, some concrete encouragement. And absent that, I think it would ill behoove Taiwan not to move forward in areas that strengthen its defense capability, because it acts both as a deterrence and a reassurance. It deters, obviously, the mainland from making miscalculations, and there are here very important things that need to be done by Taiwan to improve that capability. And it also reassures individuals that the Ma Ying-jeou government is not about to be an appeasement government. It's not about to be a government that's going to move too far in the direction of Beijing. It is going to be very attentive to the security of Taiwan and maintain Taiwan's flexibility as it engages with the mainland. So I think it's important for, and Ma Ying-jeou, I think, has a very clear opportunity to present a strong case to the Taiwan public as to how and why it's important to embark on a set of improvements in Taiwan's defense capacity that are not based on big-ticket symbolic weapon systems acquired from the United States that show whether or not the U.S. is or is not supportive of Taiwan, but that are focused very much on the merits of what Taiwan needs to do to strengthen its capacity to defend itself if things could go wrong over the years. And I don't believe that China is going to assume that because Ma Ying-jeou is in power, that therefore it has no need to maintain its capabilities and increase its defensive capacities, because for China that is an insurance, and it's a hedging strategy, and it's a deterrence. And they can't tell who's going to be in power 4 years from now or 8 years from now. So you will have a continuation of that kind of strengthening, and Taiwan needs to be recognized that. Now, the Ma Ying-jeou government has established this hard rock concept, and this is part of what I'm talking about. But it needs to go way beyond just political rhetoric. It really needs to address a set of specific improvements. Again, as I said, not high profile, not really sexy, not really big ticket items. They're very basic items that need to be done by the Taiwan military, in terms of acquiring systems and in terms of institutional and organizational reform. And I'm hoping that a Ma Ying-jeou government will be able to explain this clearly to the public, defend it in terms that really talk about both insurance and reassurance, and flexibility in moving forward with and coordinated with overtures with Beijing. And also then would reassure the United States, because I don't see the United States government as adopting a position that the military defense issue just is no longer significant. To the contrary, U.S. defense concerns about China and China's increasing capabilities will remain. The anxiety level will admittedly certainly not be as high based upon a Taiwan-centered conflict in the near term, certainly, but they will still be there. And I think it's important for the Ma government to try to move ahead in that area as much as possible. I believe also that it's important for Beijing to anticipate and understand this, and if at all possible, in its own side, to show some level of restraint, even though, as I said, the capabilities will continue. There are certainly areas where Beijing can be more flexible in its deployments and in its rhetoric in talking about defense and military issues. So I would think that would be a very important area to go forward. And I'll stop there. Thank you.